Hey everybody, Laura the librarian here. Welcome to the first TGIF video of the fall. So as you may know, I typically run a book club here at the library that meets in the evenings and reads books from around the world, and it's called Wanderlust. We won't be meeting in person for the rest of the calendar year, so I thought it would be fun if we had a fall reading challenge based on the idea of reading books from around the world. So if you used our Beanstack app for summer reading, you are all set. You already know what we're doing. Otherwise, you can download the app. It's called the Beanstack Tracker, or you can visit us at monroepubliclibrary.beanstack.org. Beanstack, stack of beans, stack of legumes. The challenge is called the Wanderlust World Tour. I have divided the world into 9 regions, and you can choose what book you want to read from whichever region you want. And if you read a book from 4 different regions, you win. You complete the challenge and you win a free book or journal. So today, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite books that we've read in Wanderlust in the past, and also a few other books that I really enjoy to kind of spark your interest in reading. All right, let's take a look. We read this one actually relatively recently in Wanderlust. I think it was January 2020's pick. It's called Belonging by Nora Krug. A German reckons with history and home. So first of all, this is a graphic memoir, which means it is illustrated. Some of it is in what you might think of as more comic book style, but it's full color. She uses historical documents, photographs. You can see from the little family tree, the heads are the real people in her family, and she illustrated their bodies and talked about them. She is trying to find out what her family, her recent ancestors, were doing in Germany during the Nazi regime and World War II. And it's a really interesting look at how later generations can still feel guilt for something that happened, and yet also find ways to ignore it and absolve themselves of it. We read this one in Wanderlust a few years ago, and I loved it, and I recommend it to people all the time. It's called The Home That Was Our Country by Alia Malek. And so it's kind of half memoir. It's about the author, Alia, going to Syria during the Arab Spring to claim an apartment that her grandmother used to live in. And the other half is history of the city of Damascus, of this apartment building, of the people who lived in it, and of her family. It's a really cool book about how place can connect us to people and how history makes the present happen. It's an awesome book. Another book we read for Wanderlust that I loved and really lived up to its hype, and that is Homegoing by Yagyasi. Each chapter, as we move through the book, is about a different character or set of characters in different generations who are descended from the first 2 women we meet in the book. They're half-sisters. They live in Ghana, and one of them is married to a white Englishman who is kind of one of the guys in charge of the slave trade in the area, and the other half-sister is captured, imprisoned, and shipped into chattel slavery in America. So it's this really interesting look at African colonialism on the one side, how that has formed present-day Africa and the lives of Africans, as well as the pain, the generational pain of American slavery and how that has impacted the lives of Black people in the United States. And then when the stories come together at the end, it's magical. It's great. So I read this one for a book club at a different library. It's called The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. It is very short, and it's a quick read because it's so compelling. And this one, on its surface, seems like it might just be another story about kind of an older man of privilege looking back on his life and the regrets he has. But this book goes so deep, and it's very complex. It's all about layers of memories and regret. And literally, it's so short, but there are so many topics to cover in this book. The book club discussion that I participated in with this book it usually, petered out at about 45 minutes. We talked the whole hour and still felt like we had more to say. Okay, so one of the things that I think about when I choose books for us to read for Wanderlust is who is telling the story. Because a story told by someone who lived through something is going to be very different than, say, a reporter doing journalism on a specific topic. Anyway, one of the reasons I loved this book so much, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind by William Kamkwamba, is that you can tell it's his voice, it's his experience. It's the kind of story that could have been, in someone else's hands, could have been sort of like overblown inspirational, but it was just his life. It happened to him. It's funny. It's a really good read. So basically, during the famine in Malawi in the early 2000s, William could not go to school. He was a young teenager. And so he did some reading about energy and electricity. And over time, he built a windmill for his family and brought electricity and also water through irrigation to their village. It's a very cool story. He's a very cool kid. This is a great book. I always say you can find amazing things to read on the teen shelves, and you can find amazing things to read on the graphic novel shelves. And here is an example of both. So this is volume 2. It's a 2-volume story called Boxers and Saints by Jean Lewin Yang. And you can read them separately, but they tell the same period of Chinese history from the perspectives of 2 different characters. And they have a few references in between if you read them together. So Boxers is about a young man who is radicalized after the murder of some people in his village, and he becomes a leader of this Boxer rebellion. And the second volume, Saints, is about this girl who was an unwanted daughter, and she finds a home with the Catholics. And during the Boxer rebellion, it was very dangerous to be a Christian in China. So it's a really interesting look at 2 sides of a conflict and how we can have like understanding and compassion for each other, even though we're on different sides, and even though we can call some things evil or bad, you can get to a point of understanding where people are coming from. I read this for a book club several years ago, The Sound of Things Falling by Juan Gabriel Vasquez. And on its surface, it's got a little bit of a murder mystery vibe. The character just cannot shake feeling like he's connected to a friend of his who got murdered. So he kind of does some investigation. But overall, it's a story about the drug trade and how that affected every facet of his life, the lives of his generation in Colombia. It's a really compelling read, and it will teach you things about the drug trade that you maybe didn't know, and it's fascinating. It's a beautiful book. And finally, this is a book I love to recommend. It is also a graphic memoir. It's Rolling Blackouts by Sarah Glidden. Dispatches from Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. So basically, Sarah went with 2 of her journalist friends to do some interviews to learn about the effects of the Iraq War and to talk to like the refugee populations in the area. And part of the trip, they're with a former American Marine. And so that adds a layer of complexity because they're asking everyone they meet in these countries, what did you think of the war and how do you perceive America and how did the war affect you? So to have the veterans experience on top of that gets really complex and interesting. And so journalists who are used to being separate from the story, they have to kind of figure out where they fit in to all of the things they're learning about people and about America. And Sarah uses this book to make a really interesting comment on how we observe things or participate in them. Awesome book. I hope you got some great reading ideas and you're ready to participate in the Wanderlust World Tour Reading Challenge on Beanstack. If you have any questions about Beanstack, just get in touch with us at the library. Happy reading!